This is a public meeting of the School Board of West Bend Joint School District Number 1. It's Monday, June 23, 2025, a little after 5:30. Oh, come on up. Oh, that's quite all right. Thank you very much. So I mentioned this is a public meeting of the West Bend Joint School District Number 1. More than 24 hours prior to the meeting, notice of the time, place, date, and subject matter of this meeting was posted at the entrance doors of the Education Service Center and on the district website. It was also sent to the Daily News, WRYU, the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and other media sources that have requested notice of our meetings. I'm just going to ask our superintendent to please confirm this meeting was properly posted.
Yes, it was.
Great, thank you. Please rise and join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We recognize a quorum of our board. All 7 members are present with us this evening. Next on our agenda is to consider approval of the agenda. It was published in advance. I would move to approve this agenda. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Dr. Temez. Motion and second to approve the agenda. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries and our agenda is approved. Next on our agenda is public participation. I have 2 public participation comment cards, so I'll read the preamble for public participation. We've come to the public participation portion of our agenda. Board Policy 187 prescribes the natures and procedures for this segment. I summarize the policy at this time, but copies of the policy are available in the back of the room, and I urge you to familiarize yourself with this policy in its entirety. Residents of the district, parents of children in district schools, and employees of the district may participate. Participants desiring to address the board should obtain and complete a participant comment card near the entry and turn it over to the president prior to the meeting or when allowed by the president. Participants may comment concerning an agenda item or a non-agenda item. Each participant will be called to the podium and will be given 3 minutes to speak. The participant must state his or her name and relation to the district. This information will appear in the minutes of the meeting. The board will not engage in debate concerning the remarks or take immediate action. The board may refer the matter to the superintendent, to a committee, or take the remarks into consideration in future action. Board Policy 872 provides a formal process for citizen complaints, and Board Policy 520 provides a formal process for employee complaints. The board recommends use of these procedures as they guarantee a fair and timely response. So I'll now invite the participants forward to speak. I will help manage the time. I'll have a 3-minute timer. And so I have it ready. Oh, we have an electronic timer right behind. Excellent. If you wouldn't mind putting that up, that's great. That way our speakers will see the amount of time they have remaining. So we'll just give a moment for that. In fact, maybe what I'll do is ask our first speaker to come forward tonight, and that's Mr. Chuck Beimborn. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Come on up. Thank you. And Mr. Beimborn, it says here that you are an employee of the district. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm a football coach for West Bend East.
Very good. So we'll start the timer, and then the next 3 minutes are yours.
All right. I'm coming here representing the West Bend Badgers youth football concerning with the use of facility, fees, and charges. I am looking, so reading the previous or watching the previous film or YouTube videos of the board meetings, it says that they've reached out to organizations that use the facilities. I feel we use the facilities 8 months out of the year, and they have not contacted us for any input or anything like that. And just looking at the way that they want to break down the categories of who pays and who doesn't, I know it looks like the people that would not pay are organizations through the school, which the West Bend Youth Football is not part of the school district, but we are direct feeder for the high schools as where we only have players that will play for East and West, or when we combine for that. And with that, the relationship that we have with the schools is we've always ran offense, defense is what the schools have ran, and we have worked with the programs to give them what they need as well. We work together, as in when they buy a new equipment. They ask us for a donation. We help with that. We share the equipment with them. We usually split it in half. And then when the original turf field was put in, the youth organization donated $50,000 to help put that in, with the understanding that we could use the field when needed, as the high school wasn't using it. And I question how organizations like that can get, I kind of figured it out. Without scoreboard and custodial fees, we're looking at about $4,500 in fees for the year. And yearly, it takes about $60,000 right now a year to run the organization. And we get $35,000 in registration fees that help cover that. But then we have other $20,000 for equipment, coaches, referees, concessions, the league, insurance. And I feel that with the almost $5,000 in fees, it really hurt our organization to keep on getting kids to come up to the high school level. And I know we've talked in the past with the ADs about helping fund if they want to redo the stands, the press box, and the scoreboard. So we look at having to pay fees and then also donating, kind of how it weighs itself.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Thank you. We invite our next final speaker tonight, Jessica Frederick, and I hope I have that correct. And it says on the comment card that you are a resident of the district. Is that correct? All right. Come on up. And so if you could please, just for the record, if you could state your name.
My name is Jessica Frederick. I am a resident and a parent of two Elise East alumni. I wrote a speech on Thursday. I was all set, and then I spoke with Superintendent Wimmer on Friday, and I've tried to write a speech since, but I haven't had a whole lot of time. So I'm going to kind of wing it. I am also here on the policy for the facilities charges. I was coming to you originally as a director of a nonprofit that uses Silverbrook School, and I hope that you all received my letter in regards to that. And the fees, much like football, would have made it virtually impossible for us to hold our event at Silverbrook. I have talked, like I said, I've spoken with Superintendent Wimmer, and we've kind of gotten that all figured out. So I'm less concerned with that, but I am concerned with this policy as a whole, just with how it's written. Not with the fact that things are being charged, because I understand there are costs to the building and there are costs to running things. But I am concerned with the policy as it is written as a whole. We went from having 8 group types of groups in the old policy to having 3. And what you, in doing so, have done is you have one group that appears to be, and the reason I started a campaign on last week about these fees is because the first group says it's West Bend School District groups. To me and then it crosses out the PTO, and it crosses out the youth sports, and it crosses out all of those groups that should be using the school. And so I think that's where some of this, the scout groups that come in right after school, the PTO, like, does the PTO then have to pay to have PTO-sponsored events at the school? And that's kind of the way this policy seems to be written. And then to take the second group and make it every other group that belongs in the district, just seems like you've gone from 8 groups to, I understand simplifying it, but it just seems that it's simplified way too much. To throw nonprofits and park and rec and businesses all into one group doesn't take into consideration any of the other things that should be taken into consideration. And then with that, I've done some research since about what other school districts are doing. What I've learned is there's this memorandum of understanding, and that's the PTOs and the booster clubs and myself, and I don't know who else gets that, but I feel like there should be something in the policy that says there's a waiver for exception, this is what you need to fill out, and this is who figures that out. There needs to be some acknowledgement of the differing groups, the waivers, the memorandum of understanding, things like that in that policy, because the way it reads right now, the only people who can use it for free are the school district.
Thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate your comments. All right, with that, our public participation portion is concluded. And again, we don't immediately respond to these, but I know there's an agenda item later on, and so we'll continue discussion at that point. We appreciate everyone for coming tonight and participating. With that, we move next to our consent agenda. On our consent agenda, we've got minutes of the June 9, 2025 regular board meeting, 3 contracts, 4 resignations, no retirements, the curriculum review cycle, the 2025-2026 assessment calendar. And I believe those are the items on the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions on any of the consent agenda items or wish to have anything removed? Hearing none, I then move to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. We have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. The consent agenda is approved. We move now to reports. First is our curriculum committee update, and Melanie Ergot, our committee chair, will give that report. Melanie.
All right, so the curriculum committee met on June 17th. We reviewed the annual notice of academic standards, and there are no new standards for recommendation. And this item, per state statute, required board action at the start of the new school year, which is for us is July. So this will appear in the consent agenda for July. And then the committee also reviewed the assessment calendar and the professional development calendar associated with the curriculum review cycle that was previously discussed. The assessment cycle remains consistent with last year, with the addition of STAR Math screening for kindergarten and full implementation of the Act 20 early literacy screener. The dates remain aligned with professional development days, and these items will appear in the consent agenda for this evening. Thank you.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Melanie on the curriculum committee? Appreciate your work and thank you for the report. We move then to construction report. And Superintendent Wimmer, I believe you'll be giving that report.
Yes. In Mr. Harder's absence this evening, I'm pleased to provide you with the update, progress of our ongoing construction projects that are active at Green Tree and McLean Elementary Schools. So as of today, the first phase of abatement has been substantially completed at both locations. This marks an important step in preparing facilities for renovation, ensures we're meeting all the environmental and safety standards. So it's removal of any hazardous materials such as asbestos, if there was any lead paint found in areas, those kinds of things. So demolition efforts are now underway, so that's the removal of those office spaces at both schools for the secure entries, as well as the demolition of the front-facing classrooms at Green Tree, where we'll be welcoming early learning program in the future. The mechanical subcontractors are actively removing the outdated heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, as well as the electrical systems and plumbing fixtures. They will be replaced with the energy efficient and reliable infrastructure that's needed. And then additionally, all hallway fixtures and materials have been cleared to allow for installation of in-floor plumbing. So we're doing quite a few bathroom remodeling projects, so that's a foundational step to clear the way for that. And then teams from the window and door subcontractors have been on site, finalizing their shop drawings, conducting measurements to ensure accuracy in both fabrication and installation. So attention to detail is needed at this step. It's the measure once or twice and cut it once kind of thing. District technology team continues to collaborate regularly with the security vendors and electrical subcontractors to coordinate the integration of all the updated security equipment. And then all district-owned furniture, equipment, et cetera, has been staged to clear the construction zones, prevent disruption. So it's a really feels chaotic but coordinated effort to streamline everything and have uninterrupted access to a construction area. A reminder that both of those campuses are closed fully as construction sites this summer. Their office staff are located here for the summer. They can be reached through our offices, and their calls are routed here. So continue to call, but know that they are located physically here. Any questions around construction? Yeah, Chris?
Mr. Jenkins?
I just got a quick one. As we are getting pay orders, I'm assuming that's when you'll be giving updates, and then if there's change orders above a certain amount, is that, how does that get brought up?
Correct. If there's certain specifics, so again, try and not encounter changes, but certainly we'll run into things that require that. So we would notify the board, and then we would make sure we're anticipating this will be an every meeting event as we go through, that we'll be consistently updating. And then, as you said, some pieces will require some action. They may be in a consent, they may be discussion, those kinds of pieces. So several avenues.
Great.
So it's just the start, but it sounds like they've not encountered anything unexpected at this point from a timeline perspective? No. Okay.
Everything's on track.
Excellent. Other questions? All right, thank you for that report. We move then to the annual nursing report, and Amy Brager, our district nurse, I believe, is here. Put on my glasses here. Good evening to you.
Hello. Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Brager. I am the district nurse. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight regarding the annual nursing report. I have attached a more comprehensive report within board docs for your reference. I'm just going to give you the quick highlights of our year and then give you the opportunity to ask any questions if you should have any. But I first want to thank you for everything that you do for our schools and our community. I have 3 boys, 2 of which are school-aged. And my oldest is there on the right. He is attending 2nd grade at Fair Park and loves it. My mighty middle is there on the left, very excited about kindergarten, and clearly Fair Park is going to have themselves a really fun year next year. So thank you for all that you do, not only for our community, but my family as well. So this is a snapshot of my team. This is where our health room professionals are located throughout the district. We service a large variety of medical conditions in the school district. Our largest physical health condition is asthma. So we have over 400 students diagnosed with asthma. Most of those have an inhaler that we help to manage throughout the school day, and action plans that we will help with as well. We have 17 students with type 1 diabetes, and 17 doesn't really sound like a large number of students, but when we consider the time and resources that go into diabetes management and care, that can look like a large part of the school day for some of our clinic sites. We have 206 emergency medications. That does not include our inhalers that I previously mentioned, but it does include EpiPens for anaphylaxis and Diastat for seizure disorders, which we have given both in the school district. We have 1,170 medications in our clinics, and that is the number of prescriptions or authorizations that we have to give on a daily basis. 16% of our students have a diagnosed mental health or behavioral health disorder. That is consistent with last year's data, but still a large number of students. We also know that that number is probably on the lower end, as we have many students that have symptoms of mental health that need that additional support from our health room professionals and other disciplines within the school day that we will collaborate with. This is our clinic visit and visit disposition slide. We had 70,137 clinic visits this year, which is actually a slight decrease from last year. It's our first decrease in many, many years, actually. And for many years, Silverbrook is, I think, as far as I've been here for about 9 years now, Silverbrook has always been our highest clinic, or most busy clinic, if you will. We noticed immediately at the start of the school year that shifted. We felt a shift to Badger this year. So that was interesting, an interesting reflection in the data that Silverbrook went down about 6,000 office visits this year, and Badger picked up about 4,000. So we will continue to monitor that and send support where we need to. We had 4,698 students sent home due to illness, and that is, they had a fever or some sort of symptom of contagious illness. We had 58,318 kiddos returned to class. That's my favorite number because it shows how many students received quality care in the school day and were able to return to the learning environment, which is our largest objective, is to keep kids in school. Family choice pickup is 7,121. That is an example of that would be like a student comes to the clinic, they're not feeling great, we do some intervention, we have them rest, give them some water, try to rest for a bit. If they're still not feeling well, we call family and they choose to pick up. Calls to 911, we had 12, and 9 of those calls resulted in EMS transport. This slide shows us a little bit about how busy our clinics can be, but it doesn't reflect all of the work that the health room professionals do, like some of the district level initiatives. We have that 99.9% compliance with immunizations. That takes a lot of communication and time and work as well. And some of that collaboration I spoke about earlier with counselors, teachers, really any of the disciplines to meet the needs of our students in the school day. This also doesn't reflect a large portion of what I do in my role, which is to support students in special education. If a student requires an evaluation for special education or a 504 accommodation plan and they have medical needs for the school day, I will be on that team. I review medical records, I interview the medical provider, I interview the family, I sometimes do an observation of the student in the learning environment, and I will help that team determine eligibility. And if they are eligible, then I will help develop that plan. I help to write pieces of the IEP or 504 plan and just ensure that they're being implemented to help them be successful in their school day. I don't have an exact number of how many meetings I attend, but I know it's somewhere close to 200 from this last school year. So some of the highlights we had this year for vision screenings, we worked with our West Bend Lions Club, and we screened all of our kindergarten and 5th grade students. 11% of our 5th graders and 14% of our kindergarten students needed referrals for a vision provider and potentially glasses. We worked with our Bridging Brighter Smiles dental program to provide some of that mobile dentistry on site for eligible students. We had 2 CPR instructors certified on our nursing team that are able to provide CPR certification and AD certification for staff. I do the medication administration training every year at the beginning of the year for all staff, and I do the unlicensed assistive personnel or UAP training, which is for select staff, and it's more procedure-based. So if we have staff that needs to assist with things like G-tube feeding, diabetes management, urinary catheterization, those are some examples of things that we had in the schools this school year. We are maintaining our Project Adam HeartSafe accreditation. We have to do 2 drills per year to maintain that. And I'm actually really excited about this fall. Children's Wisconsin is hosting the National Conference for Project Adam in Milwaukee, and they've asked me to speak this year, so that's my first national gig. And I'm also just really excited to represent West Bend and all the great work that we're doing here. And then Impact Teen Drivers Program is a new one for us. I serve on the Washington County Injury Prevention Coalition, and some of the other members of that team include the West Bend Fire Department, Children's Wisconsin, Froedtert Health, and we worked together to bring that program in. We're the first school in Washington County to pilot that one, and where we used to focus a lot on impaired driving through drugs and alcohol, it's now shifted. The data supports more of the distracted driving, so use of cell phones, social media. I'm sure you're not surprised by that. So really bringing to light the dangers that our students can face with some of that preventative injury. So that was a really great start to that program, and we got some great feedback from the students. This last slide is just a picture of me doing what I love to do when I can get into the classroom. I love to be with the students and provide some health promotion and education whenever possible. And this happened to be Career Day. I was partnered with a NICU nurse, and we talked about some of the wide variety of things that you can do in nursing. This is, the other photo is me in my Wisconsin Association of School Nurses group. So that's us at conference this year in Madison. That's the highlight reel for the year. I, again, have that other document in board docs if you need to reference that, but I would love to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you for your presentation. What questions do we have tonight? Dr. Temaz.
I was wondering on the data, do you guys track reasons for visits to the nursing? So what is your approximate breakdown of mental health versus physical ailments?
It's a great question. We don't have a mental health visit disposition specifically, And part of that is because a lot of the kids that come to the clinic will complain of some sort of somatic symptom, so that it'll be like a stomach ache or a headache or something of that nature. And then when they're resting or they have time to communicate with that health room professional, it gets down to the line, oh, we need to see counseling or we need to further refer out from here. So when they come in, the data is more reflective of the stomach ache or and then we tend to see patterns with students that chronically experience those things, and maybe even in particular to parts of the day if they're worried about a certain period of, gym class or whatever that might be. So it's more reflected in those somatic pieces.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Joe?
You mentioned the Silverbrook decline and Badger increase, and that stood out, I'm sure, even to people who don't stare at numbers all day, every day. So, my assumption was it's just there's something about that group that just finished 7th grade, was in 6th grade the prior year at Silverbrook. Has that been given any study?
We haven't, because Silverbrook has been kind of our highest volume clinic for years. It was kind of a surprise when it happened. There are no specific outliers in that population where I'm like, oh, this makes sense. There's a larger acuity. Nothing really to that effect. So we haven't studied it deeply yet. I'm kind of more interested in looking into that next year. But we just, sometimes there are pockets of populations that move that we notice a big need for support, whether that's with mental health or higher acuity for physical health. I'm not entirely sure yet, but we're going to be watching for it next year.
Okay. Yeah, I was just kind of getting at, are we going to see that bubble just continue to move, into the high school in the next couple of years?
And it might. I'm not sure. We'll see. It tends to, like you said, a bubble. There tends to be sometimes a shift that kind of floats until we get to that high school space where they become a little bit more independent with their care, or they're a little bit better at that self-care advocacy piece. But that's not always the case. Sometimes the bubble follows. So it's definitely interesting, and we'll watch for it.
Are there other trends? You talked about treatment for asthma as one of the more common reasons for a visit. Are you seeing any other trends increasing or decreasing, or has it stayed largely the same?
I think it's about the same. I've actually seen a little bit of a decrease in the asthma. I'm not seeing asthma as widely diagnosed anymore. We have a lot of kids that have symptoms of asthma without the diagnosis. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but I would say trending-wise, really mental health has been the one that's been kind of on the rise throughout, with regard to health throughout the years.
Other questions? We're grateful for your report and for all the work that you and your team collectively do. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Then our next report is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Wimmer.
Yeah, I'll just highlight Amy's Impact Teen Drivers Program. I am part of the County Traffic and Safety Committee and bringing light to their campaign in partnership with Children's that the space between Memorial Day and Labor Day is referred to as the 100 deadliest days for teen drivers. So kind of take a look at their materials, and we'll help support that to make people aware. Kids are just out driving more. They're not in school, so they're more time on the road, maybe more people in the car. It's Amy. So us continuing to build awareness in partnership with other organizations is important around that. So we encourage people to have those conversations at home as well. I sent a notice to families last week. Our students were at the National Speech and Debate Tournament in Des Moines. They were safe, but the area that when they were attending was evacuated. As we communicated, it was evacuated after a person entered the stage area, displayed behavior that prompted a safety concern. That space was evacuated. Our students were involved and again safe and celebrating their success while they were there. Dakota Ganari received a 4-time participant award from the National Speech and Debate Association for qualifying all 4 years of high school. And again, this is national level. And then Noah Minty and Gabe Bestel each qualified for the finals in extemporaneous debate. They did not advance beyond that qualification, but however, thank you for those students. And thank you to our advisors who ensured the safety of our students during that event. I'm sure that was scary. We were in contact with them that evening and just thankful for everyone who was there and responded. Today marked the West Bend Public Schools Foundation Golf Outing, so that in partnership with the district, the Public Schools Foundation proudly invests in initiatives that span the arts, innovation, fitness, from large scale like the Silver Lining Arts Center to small scale individual classroom grants that directly benefit our students. So we're grateful for their continued generosity and commitment to educational excellence in our community, and thank all who participated in the probably 100-degree weather on that course today. That was a lot of dedication for kids, and we appreciate you. Summer school began on June 16th, and hundreds of students are attending a wide variety of classes. So due to that construction I mentioned earlier, we've got a full house at Decorah. And for most students, summer school runs July 10th for grades 4K through 7, and through July 17th for our older students in grades 8 through 12. And an update for the 4x800 meter relay team of Carter Hackman, Ethan Hackman, Carson Hammer, and Grant Walter. They qualified for the National Nike Outdoor at University of Oregon that was held in Eugene this past weekend. Our relay team was 26th in the top high school category. So congratulations, and thank you for representing West Bend on the national stage. And Mackenzie Rolfe, a just graduated senior on the West softball team, was recently named first team all district. So congratulations, Mackenzie. And I wanted to share some of our clubs meet in summer. So the fishing club just met. 5 members went yesterday. Their advisor, Mr. Johnson, they went salmon fishing on Lake Michigan. So in total, they caught 18 salmon. Thank you to Mr. Johnson for advising the group, and to Ninja Charters for taking the kids on the fishing trip. So if you're interested in different clubs, co-curriculars, check out school websites. And again, some do have opportunities in summer, so I'd encourage you to reach out. That concludes my report. The topic brought forth this evening, we'll talk about the facilities pieces during that discussion, and I can add to that.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Wimmer on her report? All right. Hearing none, we'll move to our, I believe it's our one and only discussion item tonight, high school configuration review process.
Yeah, that's me too.
All right.
So recall the board is working to kind of solicit some input as you take on the task of crafting a board-approved process for exploring the question. The question around our unique high school configuration comes up, they say every, kind of 5 to 10 years. It's been since 2008, and it certainly came up during our referendum and facilities work. But again, we didn't want to commingle those questions. We now find ourselves at kind of that space. It's been a while, and really looking at the process in which we examine the question. That's where we are. We're not calling that question. Right now, we're engaging voices in how do we best create a process that's comprehensive for people. So we did a preliminary survey just to our families, our staff, and our older students. That was open at the tail end of the school year. You see that we had over 1,100 responses. If you need participation in a survey, I think we just slapped this question on it all the time, and people were right away on. I think I had 500 responses by the next day. So you can see kind of who participated in that. And again, this was just the board seeking input on the potential process for everything. And we asked them, which schools are you affiliated with? Because we put it to all families. Eventually, you're going to matriculate up, but maybe you're not there just yet. So we put that out to all of our families and our staff, as well as just our older students. So in there, we provided some things that we had talked about in prior discussions around having to analyze enrollment, academic, athletics, different co-curriculars, and financial. Some additional ideas were generated around understanding class sizes, student-teacher ratios. Is there something that makes that unique or not unique? Staffing impacts, talking about different athletic program viability and equity. Some of our teams are small and have already co-opted either with each other, East and West, or we host the county co-op, or they're so large we can't even fathom what they look like together. So some comments related to that. And then in that space around identity and culture, that East-West rivalry is I mean, it's a week to behold. We celebrate homecoming week by matching up against each other. It's the big football game, the parade together, all of those. So there's a lot of love for that history and that identity. And then analysis, again, some unique academic opportunities coming through, as well as student experience and mental health. So those were some themes. You do have a link where you can see all the feedback that was submitted. We're just giving kind of a high level to continue advancing the discussion. So one of the pieces we asked were like, okay, if we had to think about that and come to some kind of decision, what does that timeline look like? And you can see we're centering in that anywhere from 6 to 12 months, 1 to 2 years. Those are kind of your top pieces. So I fleshed out what would or could that look like. So if you're in that 6 months to a year band, and again, you should be taking the summer to think about and use this input to frame your process. I don't recommend that you start anything until school starts and kids are back, families are back, and people are kind of more in that mindset of school. So starting those kind of conversations or communications in September when everyone's kind of back on the radar. So if you looked at that, think about that March, you could do those different groups, those different opportunities in kind of that front half of that year where you're exploring things and really culminating with some kind of decision from the board. And then is there any action steps associated with that? Largely if we're going to continue status quo, that's fine. But if there was some kind of change, you're looking at action steps. If you were consolidating into one school, what's the mascot? What's this? What conference are we going to? That takes planning in advance. So you'd have to kind of think about those spaces, and any change you could not kind of conceivably start until that following space in that school year. Again, think of every piece of letterhead, everything in that school and how it's branded and its identity, as people were talking about, if that were to shift in some way. You also need to have high engagement. Think about the small-scale WIA process. We recently got placed in a new conference, and the conference was brand new. We helped create it. We weren't joining or reassigned to a conference, but it was brand new. We brought our student-athlete leaders to the table with the athletic directors of the new conference. They were involved in naming the conference, determining that. They're still writing their bylaws. They're doing all those pieces. There's a fair amount of work. And then looking at a 1 to 2 year space of how you would explore that, kind of what action and planning you would take, and then what's readiness. So you're looking at the space of different school years in making that. So I just wanted you to see what that would look like in potential practice. Any questions on kind of seeing that timeline? Not asking for you to decide anything tonight, just giving you that feedback and that context so we can come back and frame out kind of a plan. And then we solicited feedback around that, not just kind of, all right, what is that space, but what are some themes? And you have kind of, again, these were some clear themes that are in the feedback. Again, at the very last slide, you have a link to kind of all those pieces of feedback around all the questions that were asked. And again, the questions at this time are just designed to help the board aid in framing a process. But really looking at, there was some props for the referendum process. It comes through in a couple spots where those community conversations, that kind of different types of approaches were used. So we asked about engagement strategies. So you can see some data around kind of what they found valuable in those pieces. I would anticipate, again, every strand of that data you're looking at, whether it's academics, athletics, it's, the course offerings, so all those kinds of things, I would anticipate you'd be convening some focus groups around each topic and kind of spacing out that work so that you can kind of focus yourselves on one strand. So there was, again, high interest in a variety of models, being able to participate, and around engagement being kind of that two-way. Don't just push out information to us, but how do we truly come to the table, really soliciting student voice, and then really getting in there around how do you grab, our students and families are right in front of us. And like I said, when school's in session, they're kind of a captive audience around that. But in that space, how do you grab alumni, retirees, other civic groups, other people, businesses, our community at large? So how do we go about that? So there were some suggestions in those pieces. So that was nice to see. People were really thoughtful and reflective. Again, if you've lived in the community a long time, you know, they can kind of recall, like, oh, this again, is kind of that mantra. And then strategies, we asked about best ways to communicate and how to communicate and ensure people were aware of, informed, and had opportunities for engagement. So they gave us some great feedback on those pieces. And then I link in there, everyone can grab that, and it's just each question, and it gives you the full gamut of everyone's responses. So really, I think one of the things that the board has to grapple with is that sense of timeline, so that administration can kind of take all the categories we thought of, incorporate the feedback from this, and then space out, okay, what does a launch look like? How many focus groups get convened? What is that? So we can ascribe it to a timeline on that. So the administration can conform to any timeline that the board sees fit. So it's really for your discussion. And again, you don't need to make a decision tonight. I just am seeking a little direction from the board so that I can come back at a next meeting and get us going around, okay, here's what that would potentially look like.
Discussion time?
Yep,
All
go
right.
for it. It's your turn.
I have some thoughts. Anyone else? We'll start. Mr. Pickler?
My only thought is seeing the potential 26, 27 school year, that seems very fast. So I mean, perhaps doable, but that seems really fast.
I'll jump in with mine then, because I agree, not so much necessarily around the decision, but I'm thinking about all the things that you had talked about. Our company just went through a very slight name change. It takes years. And so.
It does.
And
they're
I
still
think
going to call you the old name, aren't they?
they are. They can't drop it. But that timeline of the execution, I think we just, and you've brought it up, and so of course administration is contemplating that, but I think we as a board need to understand that as well. I know that there are those, and I heard those at listening sessions, who said, come on, let's make a decision. And so I don't think that we should linger too long, but I really think that we don't want to rush it.
So am I safe to say, get our analysis done and get to a decision point, but give yourself plenty of room and space to do any work associated beyond that? Because you're going to front load all the info for you so you can say, no, this is a dead question, or yes, we need to call it and move to kind of next steps, that kind of piece where you're, then sending the whole community a survey. You're doing those pieces. Take time for action.
Yeah, I was going to say our decision probably can get made pretty quick. And then if you guys as a staff need more time to implement, and maybe it does take a year and a half, then we can give you the breathing room to do that.
Chad?
I think that I feel like there's really two sort of versions of the question. And one is, does it sound like a good idea? Would you be willing to entertain it to present to the community? The other one is, well, I don't really have any data. Like, sure, that new car looks great, but I don't know what the cost is, or I don't know what happens to, the sports, what happens to, even things like homecoming court. Now there's less students participating in these things, so what is the impact? That's, I would, as a, lifelong West Bend West person, I am willing to entertain the idea of potentially combining schools for lots of reasons, but I also would want to know a lot of details on the impact. What would our plan be? If we do this, show me a scenario where we're one single school, show me what a year's worth of activities would look like. How does it affect sports? How does it affect dances? All these, just whatever affects the students. And then how does it affect the staff? What is the cost savings? There's so many things involved in that to make a decision and say, yeah, sure, let's do it, and not have this information. That's the part that I'm trying to get to first. So for timeline, I can't even give you a timeline because I'm like, I still don't even have data that would allow me to make a decision.
You gave me what I needed for that. There's two parts. There, as I said, kind of readiness to even call the question deeper, right? Then going forward to the community, and then, like you said, if there's any implication for change. That spreads us out in that 1 to 2 year category to me, solidly, I would say beyond a year in that space. So I think that then it's to your point, it's kind of burden of proof, right? Show me what that really looks like. As an aunt who just sat through a 2.5-hour graduation in 100-degree heat outside for the 500-kid graduating class, because that's the only space that could hold us, maybe don't ask me today.
Someone actually brought that point up to me. They're like,
there's-
wouldn't graduation be like 4 hours? But I think though, just to say, I would love a nice clean timeline where when, the schools are reconfigured and Jackson opens up, we have this nice shiny new packaged, potential one high school kind of thing. But I don't know, I wouldn't want to squeeze it in there at the cost of missing real details.
Yep.
That would be my input.
Not to say that we use this upcoming school year almost to think about along the way, how would we do this how do we do that? You almost have a whole, again, not to linger on this, but I think Dr. Tomez is correct that the community will benefit from a very crisp plan with detail.
You have to go through every single piece of the puzzle. So like we said, we've got some big buckets here, but then every little detail of and its impact. Our students will come to the table. When you bring our kids to the table, they're going to think of every little nuance about their experience, your alumni, especially recent graduates, all of those to help inform and do those pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to craft these buckets, some of those pieces, and how we explore each chunk. And like I said, there's almost a do you have enough information to even take this to a next step with the community? Then with the community, then what do we need to explore with them? Then is there a decision frame? And I'll stretch that out, and then we'll start kind of building that. So that's really the largest thing I needed to walk away today and understand. Does the board no, this is a really firm directive and you need to get this done quickly, or nope, I see it in chunks and take time. So I got the gift of time today, so thank you for that.
Perfect. Your plate was probably getting pretty
I know, I'm like, just, exactly. But then our next steps would be to kind of take this and stretch out some of these activities, keep building this. I'll kind of mock that up for a continued board discussion. We'll discuss that each month leading in, and then we'll be able to, when kind of people are back in session, hey, here's what this looks like. Give us some more feedback on this now that you see this, and then how can we roll out an engagement plan with that? Does that work as next steps? And again, I'd encourage everyone to dig into some of that preliminary feedback on even just process, because that's what we will use to help really kind of guide and push in some pieces that maybe we didn't have on the table before. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our discussion items for tonight. We move to action items, and somewhat related, or quite heavily related. Our first is Policy 119, High School Configuration Review Process, third reading. And I think Superintendent Wimmer, I'd asked that this be put on because we didn't want the board to be working in contravention to any policies that were currently in effect. And so maybe you can kind of walk us through. I think this is for a third reading, I believe.
This is a third reading for removal because, again, you don't want to be in conflict with a policy that lays out having a task force, having specific things. We will pull over some elements of that we've reviewed and are important to us in the process, but then we're committing to a board-approved process. So as we refine this process with board input, you will still have to act on and take action on the process as we frame it out, the timeline, its activities. So you still have that control of those pieces. We also still have a commitment to engaging our full community, not just our families and our students as part of that. So again, just making sure we're not working in contradiction to an existing policy. So that's the recommendation for removal.
Are there questions on that proposal?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second? Thank you. We have a motion and second. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Thank you, Mr. Pickler, to remove Policy 119, High School Configuration Review Process as presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we'll proceed on that basis. Next, we have policies for an additional second reading in the 600 series, Fiscal Management. Superintendent Wimmer.
Yeah, recall we had a second meeting in that space. We had some ideas and input. You can see them in blue listed that changed some of the language that we had forward. So we said we would bring them forward for an additional second reading, so the board can take action on a second reading with a unanimous approach. So if there's anything any board member would like to set aside, otherwise we've made those changes. You have buckets for removal, those for revising the format, some with no changes and some with recommended revisions.
All right, as Superintendent Wimmer had stated, this is something that we've seen previously, and thank you for the refreshed copy. Are there any questions, first of all? Would there be any objections to considering moving this? It would take unanimous consent. I'm not seeing any objections. Hearing so, I would move to approve the policy recommendations as presented. Is there a second? Thank you, Melanie. We have a motion and second to approve the policy recommendations for the 600 series as presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That's a unanimous vote, and so that motion will carry. We move then to policy 830, use of facilities, third reading. Superintendent Wimmer.
Yeah, so we were looking at updates. This came through committee. It made mention in public comment we had kind of 8 pieces, kind of getting that down a little bit smaller, looking at different fee structures. So there's your policy language, and then there's the fees that are associated with the policy language. So there's 2 pieces to the puzzle. However, when you look at, we started getting phone calls, even to my office, around questions. There was a general feedback given, so whoever was like the head of, or maybe was part of an organization. So let's take, I'll pick on my youth football friends since they're here. There might be one person who fills in the form, but there's 7 different coaches of something that are using that. Same with basketball, same with everything. So it might not have been widespread feedback. And then again, the timeliness. And then I think there was a lot of confusion around what does it mean. The kind of call for feedback was given to people, and we completely own this. It was given to people in general instead of saying, you're this, next you'd be considered this, and here's the implication if you were to use the facilities just like you did last year, so that it could understand. So then we started fielding a lot of confusion, those pieces, and I just don't think the angst and confusion needs to be there on that. However, the board did work really hard to deliver savings as part of this. So a lot of different groups would receive savings. And so we don't want to kind of stretch that out, but we were not looking at an increased fees till January anyway in this. So I would recommend actually splitting, giving us authorization to reduce the fees where the board has identified, but then bring back to the board the more comprehensive feedback, giving us time to communicate with each group, make any recommendations, help groups know and understand where they fall and what the implications are on that. That would be our recommendation around this. And I'm sure you're probably receiving, in addition to public comment, different emails, or you're associated in the community with different groups. So if there's any pieces that the team would like us to go back and revisit, let me know now, because then we'll incorporate those in that space between. But that would be our recommendation on that. But it should come back, and we should give people lead time. And there may be some shifts, but we've got to go back and do a little bit more due diligence in that communication and implications for people, is my opinion.
Questions, comments? Kelly?
Yeah, a couple comments. I want to first thank everyone who reached out. I think it's kind of rejuvenated why we do what we do, because it was like remembering all these community pieces that use the schools. And I think it was really great that, now I know people are upset that there's going to be things, but it was like, oh, this is really a community thing. It's not a school building only used for classes. And so it was really nice to hear from a lot of people who utilize our buildings for a multitude of everything. And I think it's really important to go into detail with all of those very specific groups on what does it mean. And I just want to reiterate that every group that uses them should say, you were this, you're this, and you'd be paying this, and be very specific with people, because I think there's a lot of confusion on who am I, where do I fall, even within our own group. So I think just being really specific with those people would be very helpful.
And to kind of add to that, I know we heard in our comment around, there's some historical pieces. There's historical pieces around donations. Think of for us with our donation to the baseball field. And there's historical pieces with football and their donation to those fields. There's pieces to untangle there. And there's generally a rich oral history that we should probably understand. So I've been working with Parks and Rec. I've been working with other agencies to know and understand around, are there other pieces to the puzzle that maybe only a few people were in the know on?
So I'm trying to remember back when we brought this discussion item up at policy, not the most recent one, but the one before that is, I think, when we first started broaching this topic and trying to pare down the number of organizations. I'm remembering back, and the way I'm reading this policy, I don't know that it's aligning with what my memory of it was. And I thought that organizations that weren't specifically school-based organizations, but that served a high majority, it was either high majority or solely West Bend district kids, that those would be considered in the same category as school groups other than priority. So they would come second priority to actual school-based groups, but that there would be no cost for that. So something like, that only serves West Bend School District students or kids, that would be, I thought we had discussed that would be considered an organization where we would say, yep, that's not technically a school group, but it's servicing West Bend School District kids. And there was some confusion, I remember, because they're saying, well, what's the number? Is if you have one school district kid in your group, it counts, or does it have to be majority? And I think I fell on the line of we need to come up with some kind of a line in the sand, but it should represent a strong majority. It shouldn't just be like, well, one of the kids on my team goes to your school, so we get to go there for free. And so that's point one, is I don't see that this lines up quite with how I remember that. And I'm not sure what happened with that part of it. But the second thing is the comments that I've been receiving, I think, are very valid comments, all around. And if it's hard because I come at it from two different sides. If it was just me making a decision, I would say, yeah, these groups that are currently using things and not-for-profits and these great organizations, sure, like go ahead and use it. I'm willing to let my tax dollars go to pay for some of that stuff. But I also have to look at it from the perspective of representing the whole community. And even some of these organizations that I think have great causes, it's not really fair for me to decide because I like that organization, I think they should get to use it for free, but someone else's tax dollars who are paying for these facilities and for the maintenance and for the cleaning and for the costs, they might not think that's a valid organization, or they might not want their dollars to go to support outside of school groups. And so I think we have a responsibility also to make sure that we're looking at this fiscally, not just charitably, because it's not really, I feel like we would be taking advantage of the community to say, we're going to decide to charitably give your tax dollars to pay for extra custodial help and things like that. I just don't know if I don't know if that's in our purview. It shouldn't really be in our purview to do that. We have to responsibly make sure we're accounting for all the fiscal responsibilities. On the other hand, I definitely think that if groups are supporting either through direct participation, our students, or if our students are the volunteers or the employees, so to speak, of these organizations, that also, if there's some educational benefit, if there's some employment or volunteer opportunity for our students, then that's something that I would support wholly, But I think, as much as I would like to just say, yeah, you're a great organization, use it, I don't know that I feel if I feel like I have that authority, or I don't feel like I should have that authority to just say that. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
So
Mr. Jenkins?
So I think my example hits on both of your points, because with my theater company, right now we're doing our 2-week camp at the theater. Those kids are majority West Bend School District kids, so we cover under that first example. Well, then apparently I get to use it for free instead of the $130 an hour that we pay now. But I almost feel like that's not right. I should contribute something for the personnel, for the lights, for use of that space. So I don't know what that middle ground is, but there should be something there, and I think it's probably why the line got drawn where it did between Tier 1 and Tier 2.
Financially, I will say, certain groups are seeing a cost that they didn't have before, but if I'm reading, and I think I am, if I'm reading the fee schedule accurately, almost everything got a cost reduction. It's just, like, the actual cost of the use of something almost exclusively was marked down, except for maybe one, I think I saw the cafeteria went up $5, everything else went down. And so, it is a cost reduction for the fees that people are paying. It's just that some of the organizations weren't previously caught in a schedule of having to pay. So of course, that's a large increase, but had you been paying that last year, you'd see a reduction actually in the cost, if I'm reading everything correctly. And so I think sorting out where those groups fall is important. But I do think we also, and we're certainly not outliers in this. Almost every other school district, as we explored, had some significantly higher fees than we're looking at.
Correct.
And so it's not out of line for that, but I do think we have some fiscal obligation to make sure we're doing the right thing with, who we're just giving school resources to.
Other thoughts, questions? Mr. Pickler?
Yeah, I mean, this issue hits my work as well. So, the Threshold has relationship with the school district in multiple areas, but one of them is with our summer camp using Badger Middle School. So I need to understand how this would impact my day job before I could even determine if I should vote on this. So I think further review seems necessary, and definitely letting organizations know how this impacts them.
Melanie?
Yeah, I was going to say, I do think it's kind of unclear where different organizations, which category they fall into. Because my kiddo does go to the Threshold camp at Badger, but he, I was looking at that and I was like, I can't really tell, where does Threshold fall in this, like, how would that affect that group? Or even like the community advocates, like I know they help with special needs and stuff too. And I know that's like a resource that parents probably really appreciate. So I wouldn't want to make it so that they're unable to utilize that facility and provide that service because it is needed, so. Yeah.
And I'd say my recollection is when this was brought up, there were several factors. One was the number of groups that we had. I'm kind of turning to my policy committee friends. The number of groups, because there was a lot of overlap, and it was, from an administration perspective, unwieldy. That's a great word, unwieldy. But the second was, the importance of those groups is not about who, yes, there's about who pays what, but it also has to do with prioritization of scheduling, because I understand there were many, many times when there was, I think the auditorium, for instance, is one of the areas where there's just a lot of competition for that. And so that those groups, that is a very important distinction that helps in prioritization, if I remember right. And that's been the
Correct.
case, but that's one of the reasons why we wanted to be sure to kind of make that crisp.
Yep, and I think tightening up that understanding around when is it a prioritization for the calendar and when does it shift how your fees are applied, and then, probably that exploration, even if, and we can look at some data around people who sign up and block the whole calendar out, and then there are no-shows or things of that nature, that they're just blocking some of those. So it's like, how do you get at every aspect and make it so it's accessible to everyone? Because we don't want that everyone kind of blocked out of things either.
Right, and from the cost perspective, I think that was the committees, and I think the board talked a little bit about this too, to make sure we're not looking to profit off of this. We're not a banquet center.
Not at all.
Right, but the idea is if we have to pay a custodian or someone to set up folding chairs or take folding chairs out, that it wasn't a burden to the taxpayers either.
Right.
And so this is the part where, all right, now those were adjusted a little bit, mostly downward. But with the collapsing of the groups, there are some folks maybe who are experiencing this. I mean, I'm basically repeating what everyone else has said, but that's kind of my recollection of how historically that worked. So,
That was a core tenet of what we had talked about.
Sure.
Was that this is not a profit, this is not to generate profit. These should be cost-neutral actions. That's important for the community to understand, that this isn't a way for the school district to make money. That's not the goal. It's supposed to be calculated as a cost-neutral action.
And I think we acknowledge that that's why so many of these prices have really gone down, is because we calculated the actual costs and realized that, well, however they figured out that number back then, probably doesn't equate to what the actual cost is per hour for that space.
Yep.
Yeah.
wages,
Yeah.
But the idea that 7 groups, or however many it was, down to 3, there could be some folks who shifted a group. And so I agree as it relates to communication, but also to kind of re-understanding what's affected and kind of a, here's how it was before, here's how it is now. I think the board would benefit from that review.
Yep.
Other thoughts?
So are you looking for an action still?
The only thing is, you do have some savings in there, and our fiscal year starts July 1, and we talked about before the potential, instead of withholding savings until January, because we were looking at kind of other organizations, we can do it either way, but if the board is interested in getting those savings onto the books, I've made space on the agenda where you could take action on the savings piece, and we can execute those beginning July 1, so that we can pass those along to people.
So
Thoughts?
I'll make a motion then that we, if possible, if I'm doing this right, that we make a motion that we would approve the cost structure, but that we would revisit or that we would just go into further detail on the group structure.
Correct.
And I'll second that.
Right, so we have a motion and a second with regard to the cost savings to take effect immediately, with further discussion on the remainder of the policy. Is that fairly summarized?
I would say July 1
Thank you.
for implementation on that,
Okay.
but yes.
All right, you have that recorded, Superintendent Wimmer?
I've got it.
Board members, any questions on the motion? And have you made that motion?
He did.
You made that motion,
And
and I
Mr.
believe Mr.
Jenkins
Jenkins
seconded
seconded it.
Got it.
Just want to make sure all my i's are dotted and t's are crossed. So we have a motion and a second. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you, that motion carries.
Thank you. We'll revisit that communication, just quick on the same item. The policy committee is looking to convene in August. Otherwise, we can do this work and bring this back to the full board. In the interim, I think we have the feedback we need, that I don't need to pass through and wait for policy. If that's okay, perfect,
Yep.
okay.
I'm fine with
And
that.
when we get that and get that next round out and that clarity, then we'll bring that back to the full board.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And thanks to the community at large for their feedback. I just want to say that, not just to people who had things to say, but for, everyone reaching out. I had a lot of feedback on that, and it was all very cordial.
No, exactly. I echo those remarks. Thank you to those who came tonight, as well as those who sent email. It was all very respectful, supportive feedback, and asked for more information. So appreciated that as well. All right. We'll move then to our next item, which is the preliminary budget 2025, 2026. And Superintendent Wimmer, I believe you were going to cover this one because we had a preview of this last time.
You did. You had a preview, and we know where kind of we are in the budget process. They're still working on that through their different channels at the state. So this is just authorization based on the presentation from the last meeting, so that as, again, we trip into our new fiscal year, which is July 1, we can keep moving forward and keep building on our budget.
And did any school board members have interim questions? Not that I remember. Anyone, any questions?
I mean, I went over a few questions with Lenny
Great.
today, but didn't want to spend an hour doing that in front of all of you. So, he knows what's going on, and it's a very preliminary budget, of course, but I'm
Well,
comfortable with it.
Well, and as Mr. Hansen had mentioned, and those who have been through this process before, this is a preliminary budget. We all know these budgets work differently in the school system, but it is a preliminary budget. Well, then, hearing none, I would move to accept the preliminary budget as presented. Is there a second? Mr. Pickler, thank you. Motion and second to accept the preliminary budget as presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. We're then on to the Cooperative Educational Service Agency, CESA, service agreements. Superintendent Wimmer.
We actually work across multiple CESAs. Geographically, we're assigned to CESA 6. Mr. Jenkins serves as our board liaison to that agency. So you see we have different dues and different credits that we can use for different services there, and then some standard programs. Some are covered by grants. Some, like the Head Start, are covered through their granting agencies. Some are in student services. You'll look that we work in CESA 1, which is Southeast Wisconsin region, some of our alternative education. And then a shift for us is moving our youth apprentice program to CESA 7. They actually have a little bit wider net of services for a much lower retention. We receive money from the state. It's generally about $1,000 a student, but that's a reduction in kind of holdback to be part of the consortium with that other agency. Some others in the area have gone to that CESA 7 as well. We kind of let them go first, try it, but that is one shift, seeing CESA 7 on there. So all these are accounted for in our budgets as well, but we're eager to get going on signing those agreements and moving forward with CESA services.
Thank you. Any questions on the CESA service agreements? Hearing none, I'd move to approve the Cooperative Educational Service Agency, CESA 6 service agreement as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Let's see, we'll give that one to June. Motion and second to approve the CESA service agreements. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, that motion carries. That concludes, I believe, our action items. So we are on to future agenda items. We start with our board meeting calendar. And our board meeting calendar is as follows. The July 8th, 2025 Curriculum Committee meeting was canceled. We have a regular board meeting upcoming then on July 14 and July 28, both beginning at 5:30 p.m., both here at the Education Service Center. And again, we remind the public to double check for the official meeting postings as the time, date, or location might change. I believe that concludes the board calendar. Anything else on the board calendar? Other items for follow-up and communication? Well, hearing none, we've reached the end of our planned agenda, so I would move to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. Dr. Temez, thank you. Motion and second to adjourn. Any final discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We stand adjourned. We thank everyone for attending tonight and for watching from home, and we look forward to seeing you at a future meeting.